We will call our meeting to order tonight. Renata, if you do the roll call, please.
Gookin,
Yep.
Miller,
Here.
English,
Yes.
McEvers,
Here.
Ettinger,
Here.
Evans.
Here.
If we would rise for our invocation, we have Pastor Mike Slothauer of the River of Friends Church with us tonight.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, please bow your heads with me. Father in heaven, we thank you for the beautiful city that we get to live in. It looks a lot different today than it normally does, and it reminds us of all the men and women who are risking their lives to fight these fires. It reminds us of our neighbor in Montana who are fighting many fires. It reminds us for folks in Oregon and Washington and Houston and Florida who are worried about natural disasters. And so, Lord, we pray for your hand would keep people safe. We pray today, Father, for those with asthma, that you would be with them, our elderly, our children. We pray for wisdom as we have this meeting this evening, that you would guide this city in the direction that you would have it be, and we'll give you all the glory for it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Woody, lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Don't believe we have any amendments to the agenda tonight, so we will move on to a presentation. I believe Betty is here to accept this proclamation, and I will read this proclamation. And it states, whereas the Coeur d'Alene Public Library is celebrating 10 years of library service in this new building, whereas during the last 10 years, the library has had 2.5 million visitors and checked out millions and millions of items, whereas more than 77% of Coeur d'Alene residents have a library card, whereas the City of Coeur d'Alene is proud to have a Library of Excellence in this City of Excellence. Now, therefore, I, Steve Widmeyer, Mayor of the City of Coeur d'Alene, do hereby proclaim the entire month of September 2017 as Library Celebration Month. Yay!
This would be fun at weddings.
Mayor and council, thank you very much. I'm so happy that you're here at your regular meetings in your great palace of knowledge, your Lodge of the Storytellers. So can you believe it's 10 years? I can't believe it. A lot of city council meetings under your belts. Well, we're celebrating this weekend. We're having a carnival on Sunday to have everybody in town come and celebrate 10 years in this building. We'll be doing a Mudgee and Millie birthday cake at noon, and then afterward in the park, I hear there will be jumpy houses, bouncy houses, a clown, there'll be music, there'll be games, there'll be food trucks. It will be an extravaganza. So I hope you come. If you don't have a library card, I hope those of you listening come and get one. It's your ticket to everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. And if there's one thing that I've learned in my 3.5 years of being mayor, is the library employees know how to celebrate. So you guys know how to have a good time. So
Indeed we do. Thanks.
thank you. So we will move on to the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move for approval of the consent calendar, including Resolution 17059.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Ettinger.
Yes.
Motion carried. Now we're to the public comment portion of the agenda tonight. Anyone that would wish to come forward and address the council on city business should have 3 minutes to do so. Anyone willing to or would like to come up and address the council? Chet's usually so shy about addressing the council. I'm surprised.
I got a haircut today,
All right.
just for you. Chet Gady, I live in Coeur d'Alene. Looking at your agenda tonight, you look like you got a lot of important things to do. I'm not here to talk about any of those. I'm here to talk about, during the next 2 weeks, you seem to have extraordinary things on your agenda regarding the Atlas Mill site. On September 13th, you're going to hear from your due diligence committee, and you will see a concept from Ignite, and it is a concept of ideas to develop this property. On September 19th, you're scheduled to vote on the annexation agreement. This will be your first opportunity as a council to put sideboards or conditions of annexation on that property. These will be much more binding, any of these that you put on the property will be much more binding than any of your comp plans or Ignite's concept. As you move forward with this magnificent opportunity, I would like to remind you of a little history, caution you to keep in mind the little details, and cheer wildly for your success. The history, if you remember, 3 years ago now, I think, when you were thinking about buying the railroad property, how giddy you were that that railroad property would give you leverage over the shorelines, and you could maybe get that shoreline into city ownership. You instructed staff to proceed with that, and they've done a pretty good job. I'd just like you to remember that that shoreline that you were so excited about having the city own included the railroad right-of-way. It wasn't just from the railroad right-of-way to the river. Now, the little details. These are details for things that council can do. On the 13th, you're scheduled to get a briefing from Ignite, and they're going to show you your shoreline, and it's going to be green, and it's going to look like it's going to be public. I imagine that's what they were talking about at the Ignite meeting. And again, remember the detail that what you were excited about in 2014 was the railroad right-of-way and the shoreline. And you might want to ask Ignite why it doesn't show it that way. On the 19th at the annexation agreement, you're going to have an opportunity to say, why don't we put a condition of annexation that will keep the shoreline? Now this is the little line because that's the only part you're going to be talking about the annexation. Why don't we just keep that in the city and make a condition of annexation that that property remain in city ownership and for the public forever? Because forever, the city has been saying we want, the people have been saying we want shoreline. The cheers. Go forth, City Council, and get that property, and go forth and work with Ignite and make a nice river-centric community out there. And lastly, go forth and keep the shoreline public and in your ownership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chet. Anyone else wishing to come forward and address the council?
Sherry Robinson, also in Coeur d'Alene, Green Chain Loop. So my wish, piggybacking on Chet's, is for the city to purchase the Atlas Mill site, and then for the city to maintain ownership of the strip of land along the water, including from the railroad right-of-way all the way to the water. So when my friends and I go to recreate, we often choose public lands to recreate on, especially around the water. And we do this, for instance, Tubbs Hill, Coeur d'Alene Lake Drive, and even the strip along the water through the Atlas Mill site. And why do we do this? Because when we recreate, we also like to go out to breakfast, go out to lunch, go to a bakery, so we can combine our recreating with our leisure and have fun. And spending our money, and we are happy to spend our money in town with local businesses, and as long as those businesses are in a reasonable distance of where we recreate, it makes it oh so much easier. And so we see lots of other people too. We see people when we're on the trail, we see them again in the restaurant the same day. So we know it happens, and we know it's good for the city. And so I'm excited to think about what this once and forever opportunity can look like for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to give public comment tonight? Okay, if not, we will move on to announcements. Any member of the city council have an announcement? Amy?
I have 4 announcements from Arts Commission. And so the first is, I want to make sure that the community is aware that there are 3 maquettes upstairs in the library for the community to vote on for the roundabout in Fort Grounds, between Fort Grounds and Memorial Field. And the voting is open through September 15th. And once again, those are the 3 finalists for that piece of public art. I'd also like you to mark your calendars for October 11th. This is our Mayor's Arts Awards. And this event is open to the community and a great evening of honoring our local artist. The third is there are 8 new art currents that are going to be popping up in downtown Coeur d'Alene, as well as 5 in Riverstone. So those are going to be installed in the first week of October. And the fourth is on Saturday, September 9th at 11 a.m. at Station 4, our new fire station. There'll be a dedication of the Twin Towers, which many of you remember seeing on the east side of City Park. And that will be relocated there at Station 4. And once again, the dedication is at 11 a.m. and the community is encouraged and welcome to come join for that dedication.
Great, thank you. Anyone else in the council have anything tonight? Okay. I have one appointment. I would like to appoint Councilman Dan English to the Ignite CDA Board.
Mr. Mayor, I will move that we appoint Dan English to the Ignite CDA Board.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations, Dan.
Well, thanks.
Move on to other business. We have resolution number 17-060, authorization to purchase an updated police department security system from Access Unlimited and Security, Inc. Staff report by Captain Childers. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, as you said, I'm just here seeking your authorization to purchase a new security system for the Coeur d'Alene Police Department. The current system is about 18 years old. It's the original system that was built into the police department when we constructed that in 1999. And so we've got a new system with Access Unlimited. It's about $56,000 to revamp the old and bring in the new. The old system right now, I can tell you, although it's done well for many of those years, it is now in a state of disrepair. We no longer have any support for that. The system continuously falls under disrepair and breaks down, leaving our doors unlocked at night when they should be locked up. The code's not working correctly or the gate's not functioning appropriately. And so in working with our building maintenance folks and the people that they use as their vendors for the repair, the only real option now is to move forward with the new system. So as I said, Access Unlimited is the company that's been chosen. It falls underneath, apparently it's been looked at or agreed upon for the city hall remodel, and so we're jumping onto their bid process and have continued forward with that. So they are ready to begin the installation as soon as we have approval on that. I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for Captain Childers? Woody?
Steve, was this budgeted last year or this year?
No, and thank you for asking. I'm sorry, it was budgeted for this upcoming 2018. We placed it into that budget, but we have the funding available now, so we've pulled it from that from our the 18 budget proposal, and we've got the funding within our current budget to actually make it happen.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Captain Childers? So we're looking for council action.
I move for the adoption of resolution 17-60.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Renata?
Miller? Yes. McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Eddinger?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
We'll move on to one-day alcohol sales and consumption on Sherman Avenue right-of-way for the city-sponsored Parking It on Sherman. And we have Sean Holm that's going to talk about alcohol consumption.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. So tonight, as the mayor has alluded to, the Planning Department is requesting approval by the City Council to allow the sale and consumption of alcohol within a fenced-off area of the right-of-way for one day in conjunction with the Parking on Sherman event, which will take place on Friday, September 15th from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m. This is the third annual Parking on Sherman event. So a little bit of history here. About the same time period in 2005, we had our first annual Parking on Sherman event. If you can remember back, I'm sure many of you attended that event. That was transformed into a Makers District, and we had a free community block party. We are continuing this event on to the next year, which was 2016, and the location had changed. At this point, we were, we're at near the Idaho State Liquor Store there, Harvest Foods, and we were in their facility in their parking lot. It was a wonderful event. We probably bit off a little bit more than we could chew as far as the size of the event. It was a big area. We had about the same amount of people, but it was a larger area. It was fun. I think everybody had a great time. We had a grassroots effort to invoke positive changes on Sherman. So our current event, this is the third annual, will be held on the 1900 block of Sherman Avenue. Pull that up for you. This is the current site plan, as you can see up here at the top where it says site plan number 6. We have been revising this repeatedly. So once again, it's a free community celebration. It is kid and pet friendly. It will have live music, food trucks, a beer garden. It will include a dog parade and casting for kids, fishing derby. There's a lot of other activities as well. In an attempt not to try and exclude anyone or forget anyone, I'll probably leave it at that. If anybody has any questions for that, let me know. So why are we making this request? So the difference between this year's event and the previous 2 years was that in 15 and 16, we were able to host the beer garden on private property, and it worked really well. This location in this event has very little private property that we've been able to secure for a beer garden. You can see here, this area located, the stage currently hosts a boat area that people can rent boats at, and we have it on pretty good record that we'll be able to be in that spot where the stage will be located. We think we've secured that spot, but we're not 100% sure yet. So for us to be able to have a beer garden under the current rules, it has to be located on private property. So in your staff report, you can see the methodology for request, and it pulls up City Code 508040, which is the license and conditions in place of business. It refers to State Idaho Code Title 23, Chapter 10, 23-1001, and describes how the city can allow the consumption of alcohol in a right-of-way. And then back to City Code for 508160, which allows the exception under number 6 if it's contiguous to a permitted outdoor eating facility, which Relic is right here at the corner at 1901 Sherman, and they're recently opened, but only if it's granted under the terms of a permit authorized by City Council, which is why I'm before you tonight. So to bring your attention to some similar requests, although none of them really fit the exact mold of what we're asking for, the farmer's market will allow beer and wine tasting in small amounts. It is not fenced, however, and that is a 1.5 ounce consumable material. And then Live After 5, which we have now in McEwen Park this year, they do allow the consumption of hard alcohol and beer in a secured fenced area for sanctioned music events in summer. The Cycle Pub, everybody's aware of that one, doing business as socially geared. They allow consumption of alcohol in the right-of-way as long as it's purchased elsewhere, and you can consume it on that bicycle. There's some other exceptions that we allow, which is Riverstone, City Park, and the Jewett House by permit. So, let's see, there is a quality of life, or actually financial impact before I get to that. The fire department will inspect the evening's event for fencing, the food vendors, tents, and fire lanes for safety, and the police department's community action team will be present at the event. So quality of life, you know, part of the appeal of the Parking on Sherman event is that you take an area that's largely vehicle-centric, and you block it off for people to enjoy. We do this is our third year, like I had mentioned, and we are doing this at the Relic Smokehouse and Pub, and also the Fins and Feathers Tackle Shop, kitty corner to one another. So Fins and Feathers is here, the new restaurant is here. The request for the beer garden is right here. Be 3 food trucks, some tents for different organizations from town, as well as some artist tents. We'll put a pocket park in front of the stage. There'll be a bike rodeo for kids, which will be a lot of fun. And this is where the dog staging area will be. So this came along with some recommendations from the police department, fire department, as well as the planning department. The police recommendations are listed here. They're bullet pointed. If anybody has any questions about those, more than happy to answer them. Proposed conditions from the planning department are no alcohol is to be consumed in the right-of-way unless it is in plastic containers, no glass or metal, and no hard liquor sales or consumption in the right-of-way. There is a note here, an email that was sent from David Hagar to me, as well as Renata, saying that they support it as long as they meet those we meet those bulleted points. So the decision point before you tonight is that the planning department is requesting approval by the city council to allow the sale and consumption of alcohol within a fenced-off area of the right-of-way for 1 day in conjunction with the Parking and on Sherman event. Tonight, a motion was provided by the legal department, and it's available for your consideration if you so choose. And with that, that ends my staff report, and I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Questions for Sean? Woody?
So I'm reading here the financial impact is a valiant attempt to gain sponsorship. Valiant, I like it. And how did you do on your sponsorships?
Oh, we've done very well. We have received numerous donations from a number of different businesses around town. Rather than list them all and forgetting 1 or 2 and making someone mad, I'll just say that we've raised over $2,000 so far.
That'll cover all your costs?
As far as the costs that we've incurred and expect, yes, it will more than cover it.
Thank you.
May have a few more dollars for next year.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sean, who are we issuing the permit to?
It is actually issued to the restaurant. It's associated with their outdoor seating, and that's the reason why we're able to make this request, is because they have the outdoor seating.
So they're in charge of the alcohol sale and policing the area?
They would be. Right here where it has a little beer table that would be available, assuming approval, they would serve there.
Beer table, good.
Beer table.
Any other questions? Kiki?
So, a couple of questions. The planning department is the organizer now of this parking, I mean, it's a great presentation for the event, but the planning department's here representing Relic to get them a permit for the Parking and on Sherman, which is a joint sponsored community event, right?
No, actually what we are doing is we are piggybacking on their outdoor seating arrangement to allow the city the request in the right-of-way.
Okay, and so how much expansion from what they currently have? They have umbrellas and seats and such out there now?
Yes.
And they can serve alcohol out there now on the sidewalk, basically, in front of their building? So how much expansion is this whole process that you're presenting going to give to the event?
To the event, if you take a look at the the red outline, which would be where all of the fencing is located. It's about a total of 25,000
So
square.
they can go anywhere, open container, with this permit in that whole area?
Inside the fenced-off area, correct. That's our request.
And Relic will be responsible for selling all the alcohol, collecting all the money. Is there a profit-sharing program going on, or they're just?
We're
server.
working with them right now to discuss how that would work. You know, I don't want to put my foot into my mouth and say kind of where we are in negotiations. Daft Badger has proposed to give us a free keg, so we're trying to work out what does that look like? You know, is it $1 per beer, or how, you know, the first 20 beers go to us, or however that works.
And Sean, I've been in this boat on the other side of the permit request, and there's some pretty stringent expenses and rules and regulations that have to be followed. So I'm just feeling a little bit like I want to make sure we're being fair. This is a great event, and I want the community to come out in your valiant attempt to get it paid for, which is great. But I just want to make sure we're being fair, that we aren't giving preference to this particular event over any other promoter or event person who would come in and ask for a permit.
Sure, and if staff had the opportunity, if we're able to find a spot that was contiguous that we could fence off on the private property and it would work with the stage and everything else, we wouldn't be here before you tonight. We're really kind of stuck in a pickle based upon the constraints of the site.
Okie dokie.
Any other questions? Renata?
Mayor, if I can just clarify, Relic is the one with the liquor license, so they will be required to be the one that does all the consumption, sales, and service. So we can have volunteers being the security guards, making sure people don't exit with alcohol in their hands and outside of the event area, but they will be required under Idaho state law to be the one to do any direct sales.
And checking IDs and that kind of stuff, right? Okay.
And then so they don't have to provide paid security to the event?
No, I think under this one, they can have volunteers, but anybody serving needs to be under their responsibility. So they can have volunteers do serving, as long as it's their employees volunteering. It would be a contract for those people, but they have to have that specific training under the Idaho state law that allows them to serve alcohol.
Okay.
Thank you, Renata.
Seeing how many more different variations of alcohol code we can mix into one particular zone.
Let's keep mixing
doing
it up.
that.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize alcohol sales and consumption on Sherman Avenue right away for the city-sponsored Parking It on Sherman event being held on September 15th, 2017.
Sorry, Amy, there was an updated motion from our legal department.
there is.
Sorry,
Sorry,
that
it's
specifically says
hidden right
Relic,
here.
sorry.
Okay, let me try this again. To issue a permit to Relic Smokehouse and Pub for the sale of alcohol in a designated portion of the Sherman Avenue right-of-way in conjunction with the city-sponsored Parking It on Sherman event on September 15th, 2017, subject to the stated police department and planning staff conditions.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Renata?
Gookin?
Oh, yeah.
English?
Yes.
Eddinger?
Yep.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes?
McEvers?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
We will move on now to item number 3 on the other business agenda. This is an intent to convey land via land trade involving Ignite CDA-owned property located on Young Avenue, south of City Hall, for city-owned property adjacent to Tilford Lane in Riverstone, and to set a public hearing on October 3rd. And we have Monty McCully giving the report.
Good evening. So I'm here to present a proposed land trade with Ignite. I have maps up of the two proposed properties. The map on the right is of City Hall, McEwen, Tubbs Hill, and the proposed property. The area in white is property that already belongs to the city, and the area in red belongs to Ignite. The proposed trade would be for this property in red for 60 feet of right-of-way along the Centennial Trail along Tilford Lane. Ignite currently owns 60 feet to the southwest of that property. Adding our 60 feet to their 60 feet will allow them to be able to build lots on those properties. In that trade, the Centennial Trail would be moved to the south, and then it would come back up and join the current trail on the other side of Riverstone Park. From the Parks Department's perspective, this is a win-win. We would gain valuable property to put a trailhead on Tubbs Hill that would be much more utilized by the public in exchange for 60 feet of right-of-way on either side of a trail that's basically weeds that we mow, 4 or 5 times a year, and isn't really very usable by the public except for the trail that goes through it. So moving the trail, or replacing the trail with the, to the south, would still have the same use for the public, but would also allow some nice landscaping to be brought to the edge of the trail, which currently it's just weeds. So I know in the staff report we talk about the value proposition to Ignite. That's just from their perspective. The value to value is about $1 million value for the property by Riverstone to our $960 for the property by Tubbs Hill. To us, there hasn't been a dollar value put on that, but we see it as a much more usable piece of property. So what we're asking is for City Council approve entering into a trade initiative with Ignite CDA for the trade property of these 2 pieces of property.
Mike, this will go from here, it will go to a public hearing of council on the 3rd of October.
Right, this is just expressing council's intent to do this or not do that. If the intent is to do it, then it would go to a public hearing at that time, as you said. At that time,
So in first meeting in October, there'll be a public hearing on the proposed land trade.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the conversation started on this because we, it was probably, 6 months, 8 months ago when we talked about the land that was at the base of Tubbs Hill, and that we wanted to somehow find a way to keep that in the public's hands, in the city's hands. But in addition, we wanted, Ignite has some money invested in there, and we wanted to find a way to make Ignite whole in this deal. And this was an idea that was hatched that we feel that would accomplish that. I want to just remind everyone that the drawing there of what was to occur on Tilford is concept only. Big difference between concept and plan. I know we had gotten a letter with some concern that on the trail and what the relocated trail would be, and then there's certainly going to be, if it reaches that point, all kinds of conversation with the North Idaho Centennial Trail Committee and the designer and Ignite on exactly how that trail is going to be designed as it moves through there. So there's a lot of opportunity for discussion and a lot of opportunity for input on that too. So Amy, you had something.
Well, my question would be then, at what point do we talk about trail width? And if it's going to be different, remain the same? Is this too preliminary and you'd like us to wait till October 3rd?
It's in October 3rd, or it could be in the design stage as well.
Okay.
And that is something I've already spoken with Welsh Comer about, asking if there's a way we could keep the 16-foot width on the trail in addition to a 3-foot buffer to the retaining walls, just so we have enough space. So that we'll continue to work with them on trail width if we can fit them in there, and grade. I know some of the concerns from the foundation, Trail Foundation, and from the Ped Bike members were the grade of the trail coming back up to the current Centennial Trail, just because there's an elevation change there. So those are things that we can work with them during public comment and after.
Monty, what's the standard width of the trail?
The standard for the city of Coeur d'Alene is 12. This particular trail is already 16, and we typically ask developers to keep the width of any trail they're changing. So we would like to keep it there if we can. So certainly we would also like to work with and make this exchange happen, but we also want to try to make it work for the amount of users we see on the trail, because it's already a really popular area, plus add houses. It'd be better if we could keep it at that 16 feet if possible.
Yeah. Ron?
Yes, the Park and Rec Committee met today and discuss this issue, and the Park and Rec Committee is all in favor of it, the trade.
Thank you. Any other questions for Monty on that? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if you know the answer to this one, Monty, but how did we originally acquire this property, this right-of-way?
The Centennial Trail? This was
The Centennial Trail is what we're talking about, swapping away?
Which property are you asking about? This
Tilford.
Tilford Lane? Yeah, where the trail's at now. The city originally got the 60-foot right-of-way where the trail's at when we did a trade involving the Centennial Trail Foundation, Ignite, which was at the time LCDC, and I believe the railroad. We were trying to get the property so we could build a trail on it, and through all the different exchanging of hands, the city ended up with the 60-foot right-of-way that the trail's located at now, so now it belongs to the city.
So the original intent of this property that we own up in Tilford was for the Centennial Trail?
Yes.
And the 60-foot width is probably was set by the railroad.
Right.
Wasn't really set by us. Is there any master plan regarding this area and what the future was going to be for it?
As far as the trail where it was at, there was nothing in our plans to change or move it. We had looked at changing the way the trail approached Beebe Boulevard, because the Centennial Trail is located, as it comes to Beebe from the south, is located about 100 feet to the south of where it currently is. So people on bikes or walking are crossing the road at an angle, which isn't the most ideal situation. So we wanted to either move the trail on the south side up level with it or move the trail on the north side down to it. And this actually accomplishes that and makes a safer crossing.
So the city, basically, we own, the Trail Foundation doesn't own it, so what's their role here?
They help us maintain, and the Centennial Trail, the capital projects, the overlays, they donate $8,000 a year to the joint powers like we do and Post Falls and the county. So we meet quarterly to talk about maintenance, to try to keep us all maintaining the trail the same way, to pool money to improve sections of the trail. Overall, small sections within cities, they do themselves, but like we have a grant we just got approved for coming up that we're gonna overlay the entire Centennial Trail next year and repair holes and cracks, and we all pitched in that money over time in order to make this happen. So the Trail Foundation helps us with signs, sponsor a mile, with anything that happens to change it. Kind of like the Tubbs Hill Foundation is kind of the watchdog at Tubbs Hill. The Trail Foundation helps make sure that the Centennial Trail conforms to the standards we'd set for it.
Do you know if the Centennial Trail, and you may not know this, but does the Centennial Trail Foundation have any kind of master plan for this area regarding the future of the trail?
Not for that area. In our master plan, we're moving, the trail will go along through the new Atlas mill site, and I personally would pitch to them that we'd change that alignment to the Centennial Trail since it follows the water, and have the section that's Centennial Trail now that follows the freeway be an alternative route. In my vision, the trail, the Centennial Trail would be the one that follows the river and the lake all the way through all the areas, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and the county, and the state.
That'd be cool. In the staff report, it says that preliminary revenue estimates and even this illustration in our report was provided by Welsh Comer. Who hired them to do that? Was that us?
Urban Renewal.
So that was LCDC did that? Okay. And also, and this question isn't for you, but this question is for staff, if you'd like to answer this. If we don't do anything, that property south of City Hall, the red checkered property up there or striped on the map, if we don't do anything, in 4 years, does that property revert to the city?
If and when the district, I guess it's when the district closes, any property that they would be holding would revert to the ownership of the city.
So if LCDC doesn't sell that off, if they don't develop it, don't choose to do anything with it, then we get it.
That is correct,
Okay.
Councilman Gookin.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Woody?
Along those same lines, parking for the Centennial Trail, is that out of the Trail Committee and more about the jurisdictions, Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, that does the parking for access?
We do talk a bit about different locations for trailheads. Now, within the city of Coeur d'Alene, I have 4 or 5 or 6 different proposed trailhead locations that could come about during development or whenever the funding becomes available. As far as the rest of the trail, they all have their individual places where they want them, and we also talk about, hey, this would be a great spot for one, but we don't have any planned out together.
So a trailhead is a parking lot? And I'm using the wrong words?
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
Some trailheads are
Sounds
just for
better,
trails, and some are for other things, like the parking lot at Riverstone could be used for both.
So this shows a parking lot, or I'm sorry, is that a trailhead I see at the end of Tilson? Would that have access to the trail that you don't have right now in that plan?
The expanded parking lot? No, there's already access to the trails in Riverstone that connect to the Centennial Trail from that parking lot. Expanding the parking lot would be more for parking and to accommodate people using the trails, but it wouldn't add new trail connections to a parking lot.
But a bigger trailhead?
What's that?
You're speaking a strange language.
I don't know
Or
if I
my
answered your
brain
question.
isn't keeping up with you here. Okay, sorry I went there. It looked pretty, I thought, oh, a new parking lot, cool.
Other questions for Monty? So if there are any other questions, we'd be looking for council action.
I'll make a motion to authorize the city intent to convey land via a land trade involving Ignite CDA-owned property located on Young Avenue, south of City Hall, for city-owned property adjacent to Tilford Lane, Riverstone, and to set a public hearing on October 3rd, 2017.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will be opposing this motion. I think that opposing this motion is the only way that I can show support for both the Tubbs Hill Foundation and the Centennial Trail Foundation, because if we just sit and do nothing, both of those entities retain these properties. Thank you.
Woody?
I was just thinking the opposite.
You want to
was-
develop both?
Well, yeah, I love that, but I mean, that purple stuff out on that becomes property, that creates tax base, and that keeps all that going. Doesn't Ignite give money to the Centennial Trail, or has done it over the years?
They've given us the entire Prairie Trail.
$2.5 million.
Sounds like something I would want to support them on.
Yeah, and the Atlas Mill Trail property.
Further discussion? No further discussion. We would have roll call, please. Renata?
McEvers?
Yes.
Guggen?
No.
English?
Yes.
Eddinger?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Monty.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to, we're in a land trade mood here tonight, where it's an intent to convey land via land trade involving Ignite CDA-owned property located at West Garden Avenue for city-owned property located at the corner of West Garden and Park Avenue, and to set a public hearing for October 3rd. Bill Greenwood is up to bat.
Well, thank you, Mayor. You have seen this before. We've talked about this a bunch over the last year and a half. And we had, Ignite owned a parcel that was in this area, kind of a triangle piece. And we had a piece of parkland down in here that we thought it would be a good thing to trade these out. If you recall, in the BLM master plan, we had a skate park that kind of did a little dog leg that came around like this, and this triangular piece was kind of a point of contention for many because it really restricted the flow of the park. And I've shown you in the past, as I said moments ago, about how this would work if we were able to make this switch. At that time, you all were very receptive to that, and we're here to actually talk about that conveyance and set a hearing to do so. And the parcel in question is this triangular piece here in trade for that piece. The parkland is gaining 4,000 square feet of more parkland. not only is that the benefit, but it really helped with the flow of the park next to that pavilion and restroom facility that has Mr. Gookin's desire to have a flush toilet in. We have that for you.
Thank you.
And so.
Glad you keep bringing that up.
We were just here to talk about setting that public hearing to talk about that further.
Questions for Bill? Dan?
Oh, shoot. Okay, so, Bill, great plan, in favor of that, love the toilet.
Yeah.
But I was told that there's an encumbrance or something, entanglement with some of that property there, that when it was originally deeded to the city, there was some restrictions. Can you go into that?
We are working with the Curl family on that. Their father, in the early 20s, dedicated some land for, of all things, tennis courts. From what we can tell, and this was unearthed when we were looking at this land swap, no one knew it was even existed. And so there's a little bit of this parcel in here that looks like that lot came further out this direction. I think within what we can determine is this road realignment. Mr. Curl either sold that to the city, and then with this little piece that was left, that was right in here where the cursor is, he gifted that to the city with a restriction that it should be a tennis court. No one knows whether a tennis court of any sort, whether it was a clay court or a grass court or an asphalt court, nobody knows. It's never been part of our stuff. So we are working with the family today to work through that issue. We've offered up the sports courts, which are within about 35 or 20 yards maybe, to call them the Curl courts, and to, you know, uphold what their dad wanted to have, were some sports court in that area. So we put a sign up, a plaque, whatever they would like to have, we'll give them. So we're working through it.
And we're on TV, so it's too late to, like, just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. I guess it works that way.
Amy?
Bill, you may have said, and I may have missed it, what year was that?
I was told in 23.
Okay.
Ron, were you?
No.
Don't you remember?
Any other questions for Bill on that? If there are any other questions, we'd be looking for council action.
I would make a motion to authorize city intent to convey land via land trade involving Ignite CDOA-owned property located on West Garden Avenue, tax ID 5539, for city-owned property located at the corner of West Garden Avenue and Park Drive, a portion of Lot 72, Sherman Park, and to set a public hearing on October 3rd, 2017.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Gookin?
Aye.
English?
Yes.
Eddinger?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Bill. Resolution number 17-061, procurement of public works construction policy and procurement of personal property and services policy. Troy.
There's a lot of P's in there. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I bring before you an updated policy for those two different sections as we go forward to continue to acquire those types of public works projects and personal property. Every year, we have a legislature that goes to work. In this past session, they did some updates. Legal has been working on this along with municipal services, along with your accounts payable department, to have a streamlined process that can show our constituents that we're doing our very best to buy things. In this updated policy and two policies, we are more restrictive than what the state code is, and you'll see that in there because we want to do more quotes. The formal bid is still at the level of the formal bid process. Quotes are something that we've found can be very positive when we acquire vehicles, rolling stock, those types of things that are easy to go out and get quotes for thanks to electronic communication. So we've been working on this for the better part of 9 weeks to work through all the language to make it as legal as we possibly can. We've worked with project managers in the city of Coeur d'Alene that work on the public works side of it. We also are continuing to improve the knowledge that we have when we have a public works contractor on site, that they're licensed and up to speed on all of their insurances. So we bring this to you in September, although it's been in process for at least 9 weeks. So you've taken a look at this a couple of different times, and we're bringing forward the changes. I apologize, I gave you all the strikeouts to show you where we came from and where we ended up. So there's a number of changes in there. Some of them are due to the state, and then some of them are due to the city wanting to take the level of a quote, increase it enough that makes sense, and get quotes on those items that we know we can get multiple vendors to do so. So I gave you a number of pages of policy, and I'm open to any questions that might come forward.
Woody?
So I really did try to read this thing, believe it or not. I have a small headache, but I think it's from the smoke. This is broken down in different categories of X amount of dollars. And I kept seeing council doesn't have to approve. Are those new things that we don't have to approve now, or are they old things that we didn't have to approve?
We wanted to be as clear as possible in this updated policy so that when you approve a budget, you are giving us authority with quite a bit of specificity on what it is we're to go buy. And if it's a car in the police department, for instance, you've approved it, which we'll be doing in just a short period of time for the next fiscal year. We want to show you that we're going to do our due diligence to get the best value. Our proposal is not to come back to you and ask for permission to buy a car that you've already said we can go buy. As your finance director, I'm challenging our department heads to go out on that car and get 3 quotes to the best of their ability. You're empowering me to say yes to it. And the main reason for that is not that we don't trust our department heads, is to confirm that we have the dollars and the cash flow available to acquire those cars at that point in time. So that's the way in which we like to bring it through. We also need to get that car immediately insured. We work with the clerk's office to make sure we get the title work done. And so we've collaboratively worked with multiple departments to get that done.
So let me use an example. Tonight, the police department came for a security system that was budgeted for next year, that we haven't finished next year's budget, have we?
We have not.
And then it moves into this year. So it wasn't budgeted this year, but he had the savings, so he still had to come to us.
Exactly.
That doesn't change.
So that's a perfect scenario. That is not in the capital plan for that security system. That department was not able to fill all their positions throughout the year, so you'd given them budget authority in a different line item. We did a single source on that acquisition because it ties into the rest of our security system at the city. So we come to you and say, this is a change, we've found the money, we have appropriated those dollars, but not for that purpose. And that will come back to you every time, even in this updated policy.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions for Troy? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Troy, that was just my biggest concern with this was, we're supposed to be accountability and oversight up here, and I want to make sure that we're not signing that off.
I would suggest to you that you are not, and you actually have more positive ways in which to confirm you're getting the best value because of this policy and the fact that we did not adopt everything that the state had raised the limits to. And we have a lot more quotes in there than what the state had recommended or what the state does. So I hope that's in concert with what you want. In other words, if we don't have budget authority, we come to you every time. Every budget amendment that you'll see in 2 weeks, you should have heard about, seen, or somewhere had it happen to you as council. We're just bringing it all back together from the finance department and show you that we have the cash or that City Hall remodel is in there, those types of things. But our goal is not to have you say yes to the same car twice in a fiscal year.
Okay. So that pretty much reduces it down. We approve a new car in the plan, so the water department or the streets department doesn't have to come back to us and say, here's the lowest bid, this is what we're going to go for, and we go, yeah, that's good. We don't do that. We don't need to do that because we've already done it.
That would be what we are confirming. We've actually tightened up what the state says we can do, because most of those cars would never even be necessary by law to get a quote. This policy says we will. We'll do that on all rolling stock. We'll do that on anything that's titled. We'll be out double checking ATVs that you've approved. We'll get 3 quotes on them that we can show a constituent, this is the best value we could get. We're looking local as much as we possibly can. That's above and beyond what's required.
So the process would be that the department would go out and solicit the bids, then they,
Quotes, if I can
who
be
does what?
technical.
What?
Bids is a formal process by state law.
God, I'm
It
using the
turns
wrong
over
term.
to the clerk's office, so I'm going to be tough on nomenclature.
There we go.
Quotes are done with a direct contact to 3 different vendors.
I use the term bids, okay, but that goes to who then? So they go ahead and get these quotes, and then for whatever they want to purchase, it goes to you,
Correct.
and then you do what?
I look at the form that we have filled out, make sure we're getting the lowest one, ask any questions that may be needed, and confirm that we have the cash at that time to make that acquisition.
Are you doing that now?
Yes.
Okay, but the difference is, something like that would actually come to us
We
for
want to get
approval.
rid of that step because you've already approved it.
Right.
And so you're not turning over any authority. I'm not able to take the budget above what you approve. We just want to work it internally so that you understand when you say we're going to go acquire this truck, we're going to go do that, and we're going to get the very best price we can get through the process that's more extensive than what the state mandates we do. When it goes to formal bids, very legal process. I share my colleagues on either side of me that will be involved in that, making sure everything is in place.
Sole source?
Sole source is done with our clerk's office and our legal department so that we have all of those out there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions.
Kiki?
Troy, just following up on the bids, are these levels that are changed in this policy, for example, when it went from 20 projects, public works projects between 25 and 100 are now raised to between 50 and 200,000? Is that the state level dollar amount?
Yes, it is, Councilmember Miller. That
And
is
so those will still follow a bid program on projects?
absolutely correct.
Okay.
Other questions for Troy? If we have no other questions, we're looking for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of Resolution 17061, approval of procurement of public works construction policy and procurement of personal property and services policy. It's a hard word for me, you
Second.
guys.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to say, Troy, I do appreciate all the red and blue strikeouts and insertions. I like Woody, I struggled to read it all, but that stuff is important. I appreciate that you go through the effort.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
English,
Yes.
Eddinger,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes?
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin.
Aye.
Motion carried. We'll now move to our public hearing that we have for tonight. It is the appropriation ordinance for fiscal year 2017-2018. This is Council Bill number 17-1031. And Troy?
Mayor and council, thank you for your work on this financial plan for fiscal year 2017-2018. Your hard work is coming to fruition. I'd also like to thank all the department heads and administration for putting together a financial plan that I think is as solid as any plan we could bring forward, a little over $89 million. I have a sign-up sheet that has a great individual that wants to speak. So as you would understand, this is a requirement of the state of Idaho that we go forward and bring together a financial plan. Highlights for this financial plan are numerous. The biggest one is the fact that we are proposing a 0% increase in the property tax revenue from existing property tax payers. We are not taking any foregone, which are property taxes that sit available to be levied. There's not real money behind that. And we are proposing to you to take the new growth, which is $375,549. We bring forward a balanced budget. Congratulations, Mayor and Council. You have over $5 million in foregone taxes. I haven't seen the exact number, but that you're in the top 3 easily, possibly number 2 in the state of Idaho that have been stewards of property tax dollars. Unfortunately, that's not a bank account, that's authority to levy those taxes. Any year you'd like to take that $5 million would be a really good year at my office because we could do all kinds of fun things.
It's frightening.
Be the last year of our office.
That would be the last.
And you'd see some new faces up here. So, yeah.
Just to make sure you have fun with a couple numbers, because I'm going to speak about a lot of different numbers. Again, a 0% increase in property taxes, new construction, $375,549. Property tax replacement, that's what comes from the state on property taxes that we would normally get, except they have gotten a circuit breaker on it. We do have to make an annual payment on the general obligation bonds. So we are asking our constituents, should you approve this, for $22,232,118 in property taxes to be collected in the next year.
Troy, could you just back up to that one slide? I think that it's important that we talk a little bit more about that property tax replacement and that circuit breaker, because I don't know that everyone understands what that really is and what that helps lower income folks to be able to afford their property taxes. Maybe if you could explain a little bit more how that works. And it's a tax break for the lower income folks in Coeur d'Alene, but it's reimbursed back to the city through the state.
Through the state. We've done a very good job. They have to make application for that. It's very positive that we handle folks that are in their homes that aren't making a lot of money. The city is made whole in that situation. The county does all the paperwork. We receive the money as direct as we receive the property taxes. The state does a very good job of funding that. I think it's one of many good things that happen in the state of Idaho for owning real property.
So it's an opportunity for, say, seniors that are on fixed income to help afford their property taxes. So I think that's something that maybe some people don't understand, but they certainly should check with the county to see if they qualify for that circuit breaker exemption.
Absolutely. The website at the state does a good job with that as well and speaks to it even better than I could.
Yeah, thank you.
Couple small changes were made at your workshop. We wanted to capture those as we looked at the preliminary numbers. Again, no property tax increase. We made some movements in this particular plan, and like every good plan, it will change over the next year. But we just wanted to show what we had put into the plan that you had made mention of as we went forward, so that your total general fund per the budget ordinance is $38,430,152, and of course we cannot go above that at this time. Another congratulations, you have $8.78 million unassigned in the fund balance. We divide that number by the total expenses in the general fund, and you have a 22.8% of your fiscal year plan in cash. Couple of details on that. You do have a city hall remodel that's under construction that will come out of there. And there is the $1 million for the railroad right-of-way acquisition through the Atlas Mill site that does not sit in this number that I would suggest should come out of there. But even if you take away some pretty big numbers, the city of Coeur d'Alene is in good shape with its cash balances. We have never, in the last 17 years, had to borrow money in the later part of the calendar year to fund ongoing operations. That would be a tax anticipation note. That's a good thing. It strengthens our position should we ever go out and do any more bonding. And it gives us a latitude to take advantage of acquisitions of land that we're looking at in the next fiscal year. Any questions, please ask as we go through these. We are proposing in the financial plan that we grow by 7.27 full-time equivalents. You were all a part of the decisions on these. Some good questions have come up on why so many part-time positions. It's not necessarily a position, it's hours that are added we take and boil that back out to a full-time equivalency. So that may not be a .68 person in the street department. That would be hours that are added for their part-time situation. So good questions have come in from you council members.
So that
Thank you.
.99 part-time person in parks, that's
Almost
not a
100,
guy
yeah.
missing a finger, that's like several part-time people.
That's how your accountant at the city of Coeur d'Alene captures every detail to make it work.
Okay.
A pretty phenomenal year this year with expenses. I would like to do this for multiple years into the future and show you a health increase in insurance of 0. That's made a big difference. We have cost of living increases anticipated in the plan of $549,000, merit increases of $358,000. Big swings, meaning that our budget is much less than it was last year. When you don't do capital projects such as major street projects and wastewater expansion projects, we quickly lower the financial plan. You're almost at $100 million last year, the current year we're in, and those will not occur year over year.
Let's see, Troy, I see here it says health insurance increase 0, and I remember hearing that before, but then it seems like in the last month or so that there was a point of information where, gee, it's going to cost more. So was that in a different health expense category, or?
We've had some slight increases in dental. There was none in disability, nothing that actually would even show up on the radar. So the medical did hold, which is the big cost factor.
And I saw Ron was waving a hand a minute ago, but since, are you?
No, I was just gonna congratulate Troy, because Troy, I think he deserves a lot of credit for what he's been talking about here, and Troy and his staff, they've worked very hard on the budget and with the department heads, and I think they've done a good job.
Well, thank you. Speaking to the medical just a little further, that medical insurance committee, council members and mayor, is a very strong part of our success to stay ahead of what's happening with claims and what's happening in the market. We made a major shift from our provider. That was a phenomenal time to move providers, because it was the former organization we'd been with for a better part of 20 years was acquired, and the new company is not very interested in eastern side of Washington and especially North Idaho. So we made a timely move, found a really good company, and have had a great year. So it's nothing but phenomenal success on that topic, and your insurance committee does great work on that. New construction. City of Coeur d'Alene was up approximately $66 million in new construction. We take that, multiply it by our levy rate to come up with tax dollars that we're able to acquire. You can see that that was pretty equal to what we'd done the year before. So we've got new growth. We, as a state, are doing quite well. So the highway user tax, along with what the legislature did, helped us out there. Sales tax has been solid. Our friends in Washington like to come to Idaho and buy their liquor, so our liquor tax revenue is up. Franchise fees are solid. We are proposing to take $205,000 in annexation fees, and our enterprise fund transfers are coming over $167,000 greater than the previous year. So not a lot in capital, but pretty specific. So this ties back into the policy. We will be looking at acquiring these assets in the next fiscal year. And with your approval after a public hearing, we will move forward to bring those in. And should there be any significant changes in what is being looked at, we will get a chance to look at that and approve it as well. So good news, the city of Coeur d'Alene is pushing up against $4 billion in valuation. County's a little over $15 billion in valuation. We are up year over year at about 8% on that growth. The county's number is about 9% over the whole county on the growth side. So it always boils down to how much are my property taxes going to be. So there's a couple variables that always work in that situation. One is, what is the value of your property done? And then the second one that we have an impact on is the fact that by the city not increasing the property taxes at the 1%, 2%, 3%, or any number therein, our levy rates will go down in the next year to $5.62 approximately based on these valuations. So two good things happening. The city is growing and council is not taking property taxes. That's about the biggest impact we can have on a levy rate. So, if you owned a home and you were in the same home year over year and your house was valued at $200,000, we're gonna save you some money at the city level this year. We're gonna save you $58.98, assuming the valuation did not change. The other good news in this slide is the fact that the homeowner's exemption moved to an even $100,000 this year. So that is up slightly from where it was last year, which was $94,745 for those of you that don't recall that.
And then it'll be bad news because it's frozen and they won't move it along for. But
Good point.
And
good for this year.
And yes, and just to go on, you, Dan, to add on to that the Democrats were the ones who voted against that. So thank you.
Now, who are they then?
So let me take this and make it a little bit more real. I hope you feel good about the services that we're able to provide for this type of home. But according to the multiple listing service, the price of a median home today, so that's an acquisition, is $245,000 in the city of Coeur d'Alene. So a person buying a house today with a middle price point on their home would pay the city of Coeur d'Alene $814.90 for the whole year for all the parks that you provide, for the snow plowing, the street sweeping, the public safety. I don't even know if you can buy a public or a safety system at your home for that kind of an annual payment. That would be my presentation.
Questions for Troy?
I was just going to say, Troy, thanks for getting back quickly on your cell phone. Not ever sure where you are, but I appreciate you rattling off those numbers off the top of your head and then calling back later and correcting them by the penny and the dollar. So appreciate that part.
You're welcome.
Well, if there's no questions for Troy, we'll move on to the public testimony part of our public hearing. And we do have Susie Snedeker that would like to come up and give some testimony.
I'm going to say that I appreciate that Susie takes the effort to look at our budget and show up to the meetings and offer her commentary. Out of 50,000 people in this city, she's the only one.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Mayor and council. And I'm a little short of breath, aren't we all, due to the air. This is the 17th year in which I've reviewed the preliminary financial plan. I have them all on my dining room table. They're all marked up. Each year I review every item, make notes, and prepare my comments. I review every single page. Comments and questions for 217, 218 preliminary, and also thanks to Troy. This year I didn't call you. I didn't have time to call you with questions, but you always bear with me, Troy, I know. I have a number of things. The CDBG block grants jumped from 2013, 130,000 to 2016, 606,000 to a slight dip this year of 384,000. It's a lot of money in block grants.
Yeah.
Just my thought. You have general fund revenues. Troy, are you with me? Rents and royalties at $23,000, $15,000. Would these be from the Haycraft property that was given to St. Finney's?
Yeah, that partnership is the homestead property that's owned by the city of Coeur d'Alene.
I'm sorry, Homestead, no, it is, right. Okay, but it was purchased through a block grant, was it not? A CDBG?
That is correct.
Thank you. By the way, I couldn't find the accounting for the defaulted loan. Do you know where it is? Where could I find that in the budget? Does it ever show up in the budget?
Defaulted loan for?
Yeah, to St. Vinny's.
There is no defaulted loan.
But
to
there
St.
was,
Vinny's.
for years. You brought it forward for years.
Correct, but there's
No, it was
no
that-
money lost to the city of Coeur d'Alene.
Okay, where do you find money lost in the budget
That was,
anywhere?
that was a lease.
No, it was not a lease.
Yeah, it was a lease of property to St. Vincent's that they were leasing that back from the city of Coeur d'Alene on a long-term lease.
That was,
They
those are
ch-
the rental apartments, correct?
Right, and they-
No, I'm speaking of the land itself, under
Oh.
which the house was built. Never mind, we'll go on.
The land of the other, not the smaller
It
apartment,
was a
the large,
$150,000 loan.
the larger apartment.
That's correct.
Troy, do you know?
I couldn't find it anywhere. You can get back to me on that. I'd just like to know where it is. It should have shown up, and I'm not a genius with accounting, so I couldn't find it. I see this year we have the East Sherman Substation for $21,000. Is that rent?
Yes.
Okay, and I note that $80,000 has been budgeted for that since 2015, and I guess they just use it to write reports. The next item is a summer concert series, shows $12,840,000 in parentheses. It was not budgeted last year. It's a large chunk of change for a summer concert series. Did the city support that? Was that part of the arts group?
If I was to say, that is sponsorship money that comes through to the city that's paid back to the.
Could be. I mean, you do that with the Downtown Association
Yeah,
where you,
so
where you monitor
it's
their
just
funds.
sponsorship money that comes into the city that's then reimbursed back out to the
Thank you.
concert folks.
Interesting that the city's handling that. The next is, on the 2018 schedule for the CDBG block grants, I see that the Boys and Girls Club are apparently in the spotlight. I don't understand what the amount is. It doesn't list an amount. Renata, do you know about that? And what the reason is for that, whatever that amount is?
It was a grant to them, and I cannot remember the total amount from this one, but in total, they received $120,000 in grant.
60,000.
And for what purpose?
This one was for the Boys and Girls Club architect and engineering costs.
Not scholarships for the underprivileged children.
No, it was to encourage them to build
Whoa.
here.
Okay. Ron, this one's for you. Person Field. Your lucky moment. The capital improvements in 2016 list $40,000 as requested for Person Field, and this is 2016. This one. But nothing was spent. What happened to the $40,000? What do you do with the $40,000 when you don't spend it? Will you please turn that off? Please spare me. Mr. Mayor, this is the last time.
No, it'll go off here in a minute. You can
Thank
have,
you.
you can be here till midnight if you want to be.
No,
We
please-
won't be, but you
Please,
can
I'll
be.
spare. Ever tactful. I'll remember that one.
So an answer to that question would be that anytime the city has an appropriation that's not spent, it stays in that situation in Parks Capital Improvement Fund.
But not listed as Person Field. It isn't carried over to Person Field, even though it was approved in the 2015-2016 budget. And also the same thing with Tiffany. There was $75,000 that was requested, and nothing was spent on that either. Uh-oh.
Sue, I
Is
think
that
Bill-
Greenwood behind me?
He's gonna come
Oh
up and
my
answer the
God.
questions.
So
So help me here.
Yeah, I will. So the 75 you were just asking about from the year before that?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so what we did with that was we had a master plan. We met with the homeowners association around there, and we talked about all the things that we might do. And you saw that Scott Cranston worked on that plan with us, and we presented that.
We're talking about Person or Tiffany?
Well,
Person was 40,000,
Okay,
Tiffany
so
was
the year
75.
before, I'm sorry, I was
Okay,
talking about
that-
irrigation
that's-
installation.
I know, you
Okay.
got that.
This is the money from 75 for Fippany was from Ace Walden. And so he gave us some money for improvements of Fippany Park. And we've been using those monies for improvements at Fippany Park. And I'm going to be meeting with those homeowners around that area to talk about what we might do with this. One of the things that was brought to my attention that they like to see is a splash pad. Splash pads are really expensive, so I've got some ideas how we can do that for the kids without spending all that money.
Okay,
And so it's been set in there, we used it for benches, resurfacing the parking lot, the new standards for the basketball court, the new portions of the playground, the new gazebo. So all those things, we were
okay.
using those
But
monies.
but it never showed up in the budget as an expenditure, so that's
Well,
why I brought it up.
it sets aside as that donation from Mr.
Well,
Walden.
yeah, but that, yeah, never mind.
Okay.
We'll talk about it later.
Okay,
Thank you.
you bet.
Is it clear?
Oh, yeah.
Mr.
Here's a line
Mayor-
item for Ace Walden, Ace Walden's donation, by the
Oh,
way.
just a sec, Dan?
Yeah, just to ask her.
Yeah.
Some of the things that you're talking about, wondering where something went and all of that,
Yes.
are some of those things that would show up in the annual audit versus the next year's budget document? I mean,
I think that the audit doesn't have as much detail as the
Right.
budget does. So no, there wouldn't be any more detail in the audit. There would be less
Plus, when you
detail.
read the budget, you realize that it goes from 2014, 15, 16, 17, adopted 17 actual for 6 months. So things are generally carried, some things are carried forward. These are just things that were not. As I said, I go through it carefully. Anyway, thank you, Bill. Let me see. Now we have, the next item is Parks Foundation. You have a $7,500 annual grant. You always have an annual grant. They collect money. Do they give you a quarterly report on what they have collected and/or show you their tax returns?
They have not. We can request that at any time, but they don't give us a quarterly report. They'll give us an annual report, but not a quarterly report. They could give us an annual report with their tax returns, so that would be a good idea.
Okay, thank you. And finally, well, not really finally, but almost.
That's okay.
No, I don't want you to leave while I'm still talking.
No, you have
I'm afraid you'll do that.
all the time you want.
Downtown Association, the annual is $52,000, which is an agreed upon. As you know, the council adopted the Main Street program that was presented by Don Miles years ago that had certain things that the city was supposed to do. And I'd also like to cite resolution. I think the downtown needs, it's supposed to be maintained by the Downtown Association. And still, I've talked about, year after year, I've talked about the light poles that are, some that are painted are only 6 feet high. The rest of them are rusting out. They're put together with some kind of glue, I don't know what. The bricks are anyway. The Downtown Association signed a resolution with the city of Coeur d'Alene, that's 11039, and they signed that resolution in, I think, 2011, actually. Only it is 2011, that they would be maintaining certain things, and they're not maintaining those. And this is our city. City belongs to all of us. The downtown, part of the downtown is the downtowns, but they still have an agreement to maintain those certain items, and they're not doing it. And you're giving them $52,000, and maybe some of that should go toward maintenance. It's looking a little tacky.
Troy, could you clarify on the amount that, again, goes to the Downtown Association, the $52,000, as to what that is in payment for?
It is that partnership that is
The
spoken
resolution is
about
right
here.
here.
We get a quarterly report on that when they do a request that shows what they've done, the meetings that they've had, the programs that they have in place. And so the maintenance is always a topic that we can improve upon and have better clarity about how we get that type of work done. Downtown Association doesn't have scissor lifts and things like that.
But when Susie's talking about the paint on some of the light poles and some of the pavers
signals.
and those are capital items that I don't know that are to be included in that agreement. They I know that they dump the trash, they power wash the sidewalks, they do those kind of things which are daily, weekly maintenance type items. Those items that Susie was talking about appear to be capital type items, capital improvement items.
Yeah,
All here.
it's all hopefully captured in that document, and the clarity of how it gets done can always be improved upon. So yeah, it's a pretty good document showing who's responsible for
Yeah,
what.
there are a few things that the city, for which the city is responsible, but, I don't know. Anyway, that's my comment. Items not specifically identified. I must have missed the line item once again for code enforcement. Proactive code enforcement serves to strengthen the fabric of the city. Rather than driving your usual routes to and from wherever you go, I urge all of you, our elected officials, to drive through each of the 4 quadrants in the city and familiarize yourself with the city you represent. Who knows, you just might think that proactive code enforcement is absolutely necessary. And finally, of course, I'm anxious for the city to purchase the former mill sites. I'm looking forward to additional parkland in the shoreline owned by the public in perpetuity. To that end, what financial provisions have been made for future park improvements? And finally, I want to thank you for not increasing our property taxes. And also, this is the last time. I've done this for 17 years. It's time for someone else to get off their dime and to go through these things. I won't do it again. But thanks for not leaving me while I was still talking.
Well, we appreciate you, Susie, for doing that and taking the time to go through all those numbers, because I know you have the interest of the city at heart.
Thanks.
And we appreciate that.
Thank you.
So thank you. Dan?
Yeah, just I would give a little bit of feedback that, and you can sit and rest if you want, but the, like on the community block grant, just, which I'm sure you're probably aware, but for, you know, people listening, that's not money that we spend out of like city revenue. That is federal money that comes into us, and it varies quite a bit year to year. And frankly, since you mentioned that, and it's also come up, the whole issue of affordable housing and our seniors and all of that, and, you know, that's something that, you know, many of us fear are desperately at risk in this year's federal budget. We might not have any of that.
That's correct.
So that's,
I particularly worry about seniors. You know, that the town was a blue-collar town. And for those of us who worked on jobs that were not high-paying jobs, our budgets are pretty skimpy, and making ends meet is very difficult. And I worry about the seniors and the fact that I think it's really nice that you plow the driveway, but what actually do you contribute? And I know there's something for Meals on Wheels, but what actually does the city do to bolster retirees in this community? After all, the city is touted as a community that welcomes retirees, and there certainly are a lot of them here.
well, I'm
So
glad you brought that up, because I think we can look at doing more, so. Right, Ron?
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, I'll hold you to that.
That's what I do every day, so.
Thank you very
Right.
much.
Thank you, Susie. So Susie was the only name that I had on the list to speak. Is there anyone else in the audience that would wish to speak on the city budget?
Anyone want it to go up?
So I will then close the public testimony portion and look for council action on the 17-18 budget.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we dispense with the rule and read Council Bill 17-1032 once by title only.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on that item? Renata, if you could read the title, please.
Council Bill number 17-1031, an ordinance entitled the Annual Appropriation Ordinance for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2017, appropriating the sum of $89,467,942 to defray the expenses and liabilities of the city of Coeur d'Alene for said year, levying a sufficient tax upon the taxable property within said city for general revenue purposes for which such appropriation is made, levying special taxes upon the taxable property with said city for special revenue purposes within the limits of said city of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, providing for severability and providing an effective date hereof.
Roll call, please.
Eddinger?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Move to adopt Council Bill 171032.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just had one question. On this particular package, does the entire budget immediately become available on OpenGov, the new program, or what's the timing on that?
The preliminary budget is already uploaded by our staff, and as soon as this one is finalized, this will replace the preliminary on there. But because nothing's really changed in the preliminary, basically the info on there is up to date.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please. Renata?
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yeah.
English?
Yes.
Eddinger?
Yep.
Motion carried. Thank you, Troy and staff, for all of the work. You probably started when the next month you start on next year's budget, right?
Way to go.
Yeah. So just one little change on our recess motion is that the time will be 1:30 instead of noon. So whoever makes that motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to recess to September 13th, 2017 at 1:30 to the library community room located at 702 East Front Avenue for a workshop regarding the acquisition of the property known as Atlas Mill Site.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. We are in recess till the 13th. Thank you, everyone.